So now that we've done the trucks, why don't we put the fuel tank under? And fuel tanks can be all different sizes and shapes. They are smaller a lot of times on branch line railroads, and they're full size on a lot of times railroads that have more just purely mainline with, at least where they have heavier local service. And anyways, the Sioux Line one, if you kind of look at this example, it's right at about 1/4 of an inch in from both ends. Fuel tanks are one of several details where people will look at the drawing and say, you made the fuel tank too big, you made the fuel tank too small. Like Sioux Line engines, where you'll have ones that are old Milwaukee Road engines. Milwaukee Road had smaller fuel tanks, and that's, for instance, where you can definitely see. And then it's about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. And GP35s have a little bit bigger of a tank right here, the air tank. So the fuel tank doesn't quite line up there. And this actually goes all the way up. And never be afraid to erase, because when you see a detail that you want to change, I want to make, even though I made that fuel tank a little big, make it a little bit smaller. That's not a fuel tank, it's an air tank there. Well, the fuel tank there, I want to make a little bigger, the air tank a little smaller. And get the eraser dust off, and then basically put the fuel filler there, the shutoff there, and the gauge there. And then what we'll do is, even though I got started on a lot of these details down here in the underframe, what we can do is we can start filling in there's still a little bit of ways left to go. Like there's the step back here, and there's a step obviously on the front and the back. And basically you go in a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, and EMD engines traditionally have 4 steps. Now, older engines, the steps just kind of blend in. They don't have, sometimes the bottom step is painted white, like in the Sioux engine here. And while we're here, we can add the plow. And the coupler is right at about 1/2 an inch. And sticks out between 1/2 an inch and 1/8 of an inch. and the back. Again, it's right at a 1/2 inch high. And it's between a 1/2 inch and an 1/8 of an inch. And then there's the step right there versus the plow. Then we can add the ratchet brake here, which is a little over half a height of the nose. There's sort of a box and then the brake. And then there's basically little doors that are about 1/4 of an inch. Then at a 1/2 inch, there's a grab iron. And these doors are on the front and back. And the number board goes on the back underneath the headlight or the rear light. Now these grab irons there's kind of 4, and then there's the number board, and then there's 2 more. Then what we can do is we can put the fans on the top. I definitely do. I much more center these when there's not the winterization hatch. Like I would really tightly center this. But what kind of happens is, like on a Sioux engine here, where this winterization hatch, it kind of, your eye's not looking at how centered that is, because this hatch is so big here, which is a spotting detail on Sioux. It kind of, all of a sudden, you kind of aren't really looking at how centered those fans are. And kind of for the rest of the engine, a lot of what we're doing is just sort of putting a lot of details on it. Like here's a beacon light. We've actually drawn a lot of the locomotive, as you can kind of see at this stage. We're putting the hatches on the doors. And there's an antenna. And then pretty much one of the last major details, there's the sand filler and the grab iron here. And one of the last major details is that we put the handrails on, which is always good. 2 things. One, it's good to sharpen your pencil before you put the handrails on. And it's also good to just sort of step back and pause before you do put the handrails on, because the handrails are kind of something that you kind of want to measure and eyeball. And so you don't really want to be going just straight from drawing a lot of detail to then just doing the handrails. So why don't we just take a quick break and then we'll do the handrails, and then the engine basically will be ready for lettering.